Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at something called soft totalitarianism.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a term that's probably unfamiliar to most folks, but our source this time is an excerpt titled "The Rise of Unelected Administrative Power in Our Tech Ecosystem." And the subtitle is "How Soft Totalitarianism Shapes Modern Enterprise from the Shadows."
Wow, so we're going deep.
Yeah, we're going deep. And this source argues that it's a force that's shaping both the tech and the financial sectors.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to try to unpack how seemingly democratic systems can quietly exert control and what that means for innovation and even dissent. So buckle up.
All right, I'm ready.
So the source compares soft totalitarianism to like a less imposing relative of traditional totalitarianism.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, so instead of resorting to brute force, it relies more on bureaucracy, regulations, and even, cooperation from the private sector to steer people's behavior.
Right, so it's like a more subtle form of
I
control.
think it's like a puppet master
Yeah.
working behind the scenes.
I see.
And the source kicks off by highlighting this really unexpected role of independent federal agencies in the system. And you'd think these agencies, created to protect the public, would be the good guys.
Right, you'd assume so.
Right, but that's the tricky part. While they are intended as safeguards, they can end up wielding significant power with very little accountability.
Oh, that's a problem.
Yeah, and the source uses the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, as a prime example.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, now the CFPB was designed to shield consumers from predatory financial practices, which sounds noble enough.
Yeah.
Right, but critics argue that it operates with very little oversight from Congress or even the president.
So there's not much stopping them from overstepping their boundaries.
Exactly, and that's where this soft totalitarianism idea comes in, right?
Right, because they can kind of become this tool for control rather than protection.
Exactly.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, so imagine a scenario where an agency like the CFPB could dictate which financial products or services you have access to based on criteria that aren't fully transparent or subject to public scrutiny.
That's unsettling.
It is. And then there's this concept of debanking.
Debanking?
Which sounds straight up terrifying.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah. The source describes it as waking up one day to find your bank account has vanished.
Like it's just gone.
Poof, gone.
Wow.
So debanking is often presented as like a necessary risk management tool.
Okay.
But the process for determining who gets debanked can be incredibly opaque. And what's even more concerning is that, as the source points out, factors like your political affiliations or involvement in certain industries.
So political affiliations.
Like the cryptocurrency world can actually trigger this action.
So you're saying that simply supporting a particular candidate or working in a specific field could put your entire financial life in jeopardy?
That's what the source is saying.
It's a huge red flag.
It is a huge red flag.
That goes against the principles of fairness and equal access that we expect in a democratic society.
Absolutely. And it's not just hypothetical. The source mentions Operation Choke Point.
Operation Choke Point.
It was a program during the Obama administration that pressured banks to sever ties with entire industries.
Really?
They even cite legal marijuana and firearms as examples.
So they were basically deemed guilty and punished without a fair trial.
That's what the source is arguing, and it gets even crazier. The source claims that the Biden administration tried something similar with what they're calling Operation Choke Point 2.0 this time, targeting the crypto and WB3 space.
Wow.
And they allege that hundreds, if not thousands, of crypto startups and employees were suddenly debanked without any clear justification.
But what happens to our system of checks and balances if the government can exert this kind of influence over the financial system?
That's the question, right?
It creates a chilling effect on innovation and dissent. If people fear that expressing certain views or engaging in specific business activities could lead to financial ruin, they're less likely to step outside the lines.
It's almost as if the fear of financial repercussions becomes a tool for suppressing certain ideas or industries, even if those ideas or industries are perfectly legal.
Precisely. And this is where we see the private sector becoming entangled in this web of soft totalitarianism.
Okay, I'm ready to hear more about that. The source uses this phrase, privatized sanctions.
Privatized sanctions.
Which sounds particularly ominous.
It does sound ominous.
So instead of the government directly punishing someone, they're subtly pressuring companies to do their dirty work for them.
So banks and corporations facing pressure from regulators, become the enforcers of this shadow system of sanctions.
It's like a whisper campaign, but with dire consequences.
Wow, so someone could find themselves cut off from essential services.
Yeah.
Just because the government whispered in the ear of a bank or a payment processor.
That's a scary thought.
It is scary.
And the source paints a pretty bleak picture, especially for folks in the tech world. They talk about startup founders struggling to even get basic banking services because they're seen as too risky, particularly if they're involved in the crypto space.
Right, so if we connect this back to the concept of soft totalitarianism, it's not just about outright censorship. It's about controlling behavior by making certain activities or industries financially impossible to operate in.
So they're trying to shut down innovation before it even gets started, especially if that innovation challenges the status quo.
You got it.
Yeah.
Wow, this is pretty heavy stuff.
It is, and that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore how this system impacts not only the tech world, but also our ability to freely express ourselves in dissent.
Yeah, wait.
Stay tuned. So as we were discussing, this chilling effect of soft totalitarianism goes beyond just like startups and venture capitalists.
Right. It's not just businesses being shut down.
Right.
It's about like individuals being silenced.
It's exactly other. The source argues that the potential for these financial repercussions can actually stifle dissent and activism.
Oh, wow.
On a much broader scale.
So people might hesitate to donate to certain causes or publicly criticize the government if they fear, jeopardizing their access to financial services?
Exactly. Think about it. If voicing your opinion or supporting a cause could potentially result in losing your bank account.
Oh, gosh.
Or the ability to use online payment platforms.
Oh.
Wouldn't you think twice before speaking out?
It'd be like a modern-day witch hunt, where instead of burning people at the stake, they just cut off their access to money.
Yeah, that's a pretty stark image.
It is.
But it really highlights that insidious nature of this form of control.
Yeah.
It creates this environment of self-censorship.
Right.
Where people are afraid to express dissenting views just for fear of financial retribution.
And it's all happening under the radar. You might not even realize you're being censored because it's done through these subtle financial mechanisms. Right, it's like they're trying to control the flow of information by controlling the flow of money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what can we even do about it?
Well,
the source mentions legal challenges, but even acknowledges that the system is like designed to be almost impenetrable.
Yeah.
It feels like David versus Goliath, with Goliath having like an army of lawyers and bureaucrats on his side.
You're right. It's not an easy fight.
No.
This soft totalitarianism thrives in complexity. It exploits legal loopholes and bureaucratic structures to shield itself from scrutiny.
It's sneaky.
It is. But as the source suggests, exposing these mechanisms and holding those in power accountable requires a multi-pronged approach.
So it's not just about individual legal battles. It's about a collective effort to shine a light on these practices and demand greater transparency.
We need more people digging into this and sounding the alarm.
Yeah, we need like investigative journalists, researchers, academics, even everyday citizens just raising awareness.
Yes, and demanding accountability.
And lawmakers who are willing to push for greater oversight.
Absolutely. We need lawmakers
and transparency.
Who are willing to push for greater oversight and transparency.
Of these powerful agencies and institutions.
Yes. And crucially, we need an informed public.
Yes.
That understands the stakes and is willing to push back against these encroachments on our freedoms.
Okay, so it's about amplifying those individual voices and turning them into a collective force for change.
Precisely. The source highlights the power of collective action.
Okay.
Even small acts of resistance, when multiplied across a large enough group of people, can create significant pressure for change.
So it's like a digital age boycott. If enough people refuse to use a particular service or platform because of its complicity in the system, it can force them to reconsider their actions.
Exactly.
It reminds me of how social media movements have been able to like bring about real-world change.
Absolutely.
In recent years.
And remember, this fight against soft totalitarianism isn't just about protecting ourselves. It's about protecting our communities and future generations.
Our kids.
It's about ensuring that we live in a society where innovation thrives, dissent is valued, and individual freedoms are cherished, not suppressed.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive, albeit somewhat unsettling, but I do feel like a renewed sense of hope. If we can raise awareness about these issues and empower individuals to take action, we can push back against this tide of control and build a more free and open society.
I agree.
But I am feeling a bit overwhelmed by the sheer scale of this problem. Where do we even start?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll delve into. In the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we'll explore some practical steps that individuals can take to push back against this creeping tide of soft totalitarianism.
Can't wait.
Stay tuned.
So welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into this idea of soft totalitarianism. We've covered a lot, exploring how these seemingly benign systems can be used to kind of like subtly control behavior, stifle dissent. But now for the million-dollar question, what can we as individuals actually do about it? Right. It's easy to feel powerless when you're faced with such a complex and pervasive system.
It can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But the source does offer a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
It emphasizes that awareness and action, even at the individual level, can make a difference.
Okay, so give us the tools. What are some practical steps that we can take?
The first and most important step is to stay informed.
Stay informed.
Pay close attention to the news, especially when it comes to government regulations and the actions of these powerful agencies.
Okay.
But don't just passively consume information. Read critically. Question the narratives that are being presented.
So hone those critical thinking skills.
Exactly.
Don't just take things at face value.
Right.
Do your own research, connect the dots.
And don't be afraid to speak up.
Speak up.
Even if it feels like you're a lone voice in the wilderness. Share your concerns with your friends, your family, online communities, support organizations that are fighting for transparency and accountability. Contact your elected officials and voice your concerns about policies that you feel are encroaching on individual freedoms.
So it's about amplifying those individual voices.
Yeah.
And turning them into a collective force
Precisely.
for change.
The source highlights the power of collective action.
Okay.
Even small acts of resistance, when multiplied across a large enough group, can create significant pressure for change.
Like a digital age boycott.
Yeah, think of it like a digital age boycott. If enough people refuse to use a particular service or platform
Because of its complicity.
because of its complicity in this system,
Yeah.
it can force them to reconsider their actions.
This reminds me of how social media movements have been able to bring about real-world change
Absolutely.
in recent years.
It's powerful.
It is powerful.
And remember, this fight against soft totalitarianism
Yeah.
isn't just about protecting ourselves. It's about protecting our communities and future generations.
Right. It's about our kids.
It's about ensuring that we live in a society
Oh.
where innovation thrives, dissent is valued, and individual freedoms are cherished, not suppressed.
I really enjoyed this deep dive. It's definitely been eye-opening and unsettling, but it's nice to end on a note of hope.
Yeah.
So if we can all raise awareness about these issues and empower individuals to take action, I really think we can push back against this tide of control and build a more free and open society.
I agree.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, knowledge is power. Use it wisely.